Hey guys, my name is Francisco Hernandez, and today I'm doing another episode in my Building the Shot series, which is a series where I break down as much as I can about how I created one photo. I'm going to go over this shot on the screen right here of Sara from a photo shoot I did back in July, and I actually did another Building the Shot episode from this photo shoot going over 3 different shots with another outfit. So in case you guys want to know how I took these shots on the screen right here, then you guys can go ahead and click the top right of the screen, or if you don't have the annotations on, you can click the link that's going to be in the description below. As always, the first thing I want to talk about is the gear. So I use the Sony a7R III, even though I have the a7R IV. And the reason why I use the R3 again is because I'm using a sensor ND filter. So it's a ND filter that goes directly over the sensor of my camera. And I want to show you guys that right now. So this is the Sigma Art35 f1.2 on my a7R III. This is the combo that I use for this shot. So I'm going to go ahead and take off the lens and show you guys just how the sensor looks like on the camera. Hopefully it focuses. You guys can see that it's on there. It's very easy to take off and put on. That's why I really enjoy this ND filter. It's by a company called STC Optics. I'm not sure if they have them in stock right now, but if they do, I'll leave a link in the description area below as well so you guys can check them out. I've been really loving the Sigma Art35 1.2 because it allows me to grab more scene. It's designed specifically for Sony mirrorless cameras. Other Sigma lenses, they usually just have an adapter built in, but this one was designed for Sony mirrorless, so it performs really fast and it has a very wide aperture of f1.2 that with an autofocus system. So there's a lot of f1.2 lenses out there that are manual focus, but this one has autofocus. So that's why I've been using this lens a lot. The transmitter that I've been using is the Godox X Pro S, also known by Adorama as the R2 Pro transmitter, the version 1. It's this one right here. I like the simplicity of this transmitter. It's very easy to change the power and control multiple lights. So in case you guys want to do that, then you can do that with this transmitter. I'll leave a link in the top right corner of the screen to a video by Rob Hall where he goes more about, describes more about this transmitter. The modifier that I used on the Godox AD300 Pro was the Glow Grand Parabox Pro. It's the Pro version of their modifiers. And the reason why I used that specific modifier is because with the 300, since it's not as strong as like a 400 or 600, I want to use something that's kind of small so it's concentrated instead of something that's very big and kind of dispersing the light everywhere instead of focusing it. So in other words, because it's a weaker strobe, I want to make sure that I can make use of all that power that I have, so I'm focusing it more rather than spreading it out with a bigger modifier. More often than not, if I'm shooting in bright conditions, I'll use a strobe that has a good amount of power, which is probably like the Godox AD300 in this example, with a not so big modifier. And if it's in the late afternoon or in the night, then you can use whatever size modifier you want because you don't need so much power at night or in the late afternoon. Let's just go ahead and jump right into Lightroom so I can show you guys all of the different shots and the thought process involved because there are quite a bit of shots to show you. Alright, so now we're here in Lightroom and we're working with the second outfit from this photo shoot, which is the red outfit. Previously, we're working with this blue dress, and again, I did make another episode of Building the Shot with this outfit in case you guys want to check that out. So that's going to be in the link in the description below. But let's go ahead and talk about this outfit here and what was going through my head right now. What you don't see with this specific shot is that I'm having a brain fart in terms of thinking of an interesting composition and an interesting spot in the location that we're shooting in. Because I couldn't think of anything super interesting, I relied on my crutch of the Sigma Art 105 1.4 to just blur the background completely. So that's why I had her against this pole and with that Sigma Art 105 1.4, because I couldn't think of an interesting enough shot. Usually when I can't think of a very interesting shot, I'll go ahead and rely on stuff like that. And as I'm taking these series of shots, then I'll think of other shots to take with other lenses that I might have. So I'm kind of multitasking in terms of taking the shot and thinking of the next shot. So that's exactly what was going through my head here. In addition to that multi-thinking of the different compositions that I'm gonna take next, I'm thinking of other things like, how do I like this shot and how do I want to alter it? One thing I wanted to do in terms of this shot compared to the next is I wanted more color in the background. So right now at the settings of 1/100th of a second, f1.4, ISO 100, the background looks like this, and it's not overexposed or anything, but it's exposed so that the color is not really coming through. So usually when I want more color in a background, I'll go ahead and underexpose it just a little bit. In this specific case, I underexposed it a little too much. About 2.5 stops, maybe a little bit more than 2, created this background. But I felt like not only was the color coming through, I felt like it was a little too dramatic And I also felt like these lines here were showing up too much. So I didn't want them to be very visible. I could have edited them out, but I felt like the shot was a little too dark. So in this next shot that I'm about to show you, I brighten it up again. What you're seeing right now is obviously not a great composition, but what you're not seeing in this previous shot and this other previous shot here is that I did like this composition, but I wanted a full body shot. And what you're not seeing, which I'm about to show you right now with this shot here, is that she's posed against this pole right here, but my back is literally against the wall. So I can't really grab a full body shot. I can't really go through the wall. So one thing I did was called a Brennizer, also known as a bokeh panorama. A Brennizer is just a series of shots that you combine together to create a shot that you normally couldn't before. So usually people do that to make a very, very shallow depth of field. But whenever I do those, I usually take these shots and make a Brennizer because I want a composition that I can't take because, you know, of limited space. I've done this once before in an old video of mine. I'll show you guys a little clip of that on the screen right now. My space was limited. I had a bush right behind me and I couldn't go into that bush, or I didn't want to at least. So I took a series of shots and combined them later. And that's exactly what you're gonna see right now. So this shot right here is the first of a different series of shots that I am gonna combine in a second. In this very next shot, I think my assistant, whoever's assisting me, moved the light a little bit back so she became a little bit darker. But then I thought, okay, I do have this shot right here where the exposure is fine, so let me just go ahead and take another series of shots with the correct exposure. I told them to bring it back closer, and I got the correct exposure to match that first shot here, and then continued. So this is basically my first correct puzzle piece, and then I continued to go lower and lower and lower. And the key to taking a Brennizer is to not adjust your focus. Get your focus right, switch to manual focus, or at least take off the autofocus on the shutter, and then take a different series of shots while not moving so much, just kind of going up and down, left and right, but not actually moving left and right or going forward and back. You just want to kind of pivot. So my friend Rob Hall actually made a video on this, so you guys can learn more about that by checking out his video. I'll leave a link to that video in the description area below, or you can click the top right corner of the screen. But let me go ahead and just show you the end results of those different shots together. I don't mind this expression or this composition, but I'm not really liking it again. So I decided to go back to being closer. So let me go ahead and show you guys those shots right here. I actually really do like these next series of shots here. This shot here compared to this one's a little bit lower of an angle. I decided to go ahead and just adjust exposure a little bit darker, I guess. And then I got a blurry shot. I'm gonna give myself an excuse here that my back was against the wall and I was getting low and I was trying to just go like focus like this with my camera right in my body, and I wasn't really putting my eye in the viewfinder or anything. So that's my excuse. But I did take a couple of shots in focus, and that's what you're seeing right now on the screen. She did have sunglasses and I thought that would be interesting, but I ended up really liking these shots without the sunglasses. So I did take a couple of shots. I do like these shots here, but I wasn't really in love with these shots. So I did take these shots. You know, I'm saying shots way too much, but yeah, I ended up happy enough with this shot and a couple of one of the other previous shots without the glasses, and then I moved on to a different spot. I took this shot so you guys can see exactly how it looks like without any sort of lighting on, and you can see exactly what the light's doing, in other words. So here's the light off, and here's the light on. I'm at 1/200th of a second, f1.2 at ISO 100. Now with the Sigma Art 35 1.2, that's why you can see more of the scene. And what's going through my head as I take this shot and the next series of shots is that I'm trying to really nail down the composition. So what I'm seeing right now as an observer of this shot is that there's not enough light hitting her eyes. So I want to kind of correct that right now. But what was going through my head as I was taking this shot is wanting to go ahead and fix that composition first. She actually has a good pose going on and she always has great expressions. But me nailing the lighting was something that I needed to fix right here, along with the composition. So let's go ahead and see the next couple shots. I went to a lower angle, and then I went to a higher angle, and then I lowered the light so that it started to fill in the eyes. You can actually see the catch lights now. You can barely see the catch light right here, but usually when I brighten the eye, it gets to a point where it's enough. And usually if there's one eye that doesn't have a good enough catch light and the other does, then I'll transfer that catch light to the other end post. So I think I do that in another shot. Maybe if not the shot from today, then I've done it before in the past. I want to say that I was happy with this specific shot. And I guess I must have thought, okay, maybe I could just remove this in post or remove all the wires in post. You know, I ended up just moving on and adjusting my lighting to be different. So right now I have the light a little bit on the side of her. So you can see that the shadow right there is going to the right side. Camera left, but her right side. Take notice of those shadows. And then in the next shot, you can see that it's, the shadows are more towards the center. It's more butterfly lighting. In other words, it's in front of her, up, and angled down towards her. So that's paramount / butterfly lighting, I believe. But again, I just wanted to let you guys know that the light's different. And the reason why I adjusted the lighting was because I was happy with the shot, with the dramatic shadows from the side. I want you guys to focus on her hair right here, aside from the tad bit of overexposure on the light. But focus on the hair for a second, because the placement of the hair is actually really important, and it can make a shot really, really nice, or it can just be a plain shot. So right now, I actually do like where it's at right now on her right side, camera left. And in the next shot, you can see that it's completely different. It's more volume towards the center. I liked this shot, so I was happy with this, and I wanted to work with another composition. So all I did was ask her to just kind of look away, very dramatic. And I ended up with this shot, and I actually was happy with this shot. So I took one more shot with her just slightly with the chin raised a little bit, and I was happy with both of these shots. And then I took a behind the scenes, and then I moved on. So this is the very next shot that I took, and I wanted to take this shot because I never really take environmental shots, what's going on in the scene, and I wanted to kind of really place her in that environment rather than blur it completely. So I did actually use a wide aperture of f1.2, but you can still see what's going on in the background. Because I had that 6-stop ND filter, I had to adjust my settings where I usually wouldn't adjust them. So I'm at 1/150th of a second, ISO 200, and that's the reason why I have those settings, because I had that ND filter attached still, and I didn't want to take it off and waste time. But I was actually really happy with this shot, because again, I never really take environmental shots, with plain backgrounds. I usually kind of work with skies and interesting stuff like that. But I was happy with the shot. There's a pool bar behind her, and she kind of just has this kind of dreamy look, like if she's just waiting. I think I actually told her to act like she's waiting for somebody, and I was happy with the shot. But I wanted to take different compositions in this specific spot and different kind of poses as well. So you're gonna see that right now when I take this shot here. She's looking down at me. I want to say that I adjust the hair in a second. So yeah. You can see here her hair's back. She's just kind of shifting her head a little bit. But then I thought, maybe we'll bring the hair to the front and it'll look different. Very interesting. And I actually really like her hair here. I'm actually torn between the two. I feel like the hair is too less here, and I feel like it's too much here. So I go ahead and kind of go to the middle, and I kind of just have it parted, one in the front, one in the back. Went ahead and just adjusted myself and change the composition, because I actually was happy with everything else. So I'm just going to go through these different shots right now, but you can see that the pose was usually right here with her knees kind of together. Throughout all these different shots here, the knees are together. And I thought, after I really liked this shot, maybe I can make the pose a little bit better, and that's why I ended up having this pose here. I actually prefer this pose, but I wish her back was a little bit straighter. I actually asked her to do that right here, back straighter. But still, I'm not really in love with this shot, so I actually would prefer the legs together in this pose. Here's the behind the scenes of that shot. Okay, so now we're here with the more interesting spot. So you can see that this construction barrier, the blockage thing here, was it was actually to the side of us, and I was looking at it, and I was seeing how it's kind of like torn, or actually looks kind of like aged a bit, and I actually really liked that rather than completely fresh and new. And I knew that the color was close enough to her shirt so that I could either manipulate the color of her shirt, or I could manipulate the color of the barrier there. And I ended up manipulating the color of the barrier. So I just thought of, how can I impose her there? Maybe I can just have her, next to it with the, her hand kind of on it, kind of just, relaxed onto it, her looking above the camera. And I took this shot, and I was actually really happy with it. You can see that it is actually just, a tad bit underexposed, maybe a stop underexposed. And I've mentioned this before in other videos. I actually have my LCD screen on my camera way too bright. It's at sunny brightness, and because of that, it gives me a false reading. But I don't mind, because it gives me although it gives me a false reading and gives me an underexposed shot, it protects me against overblowing the highlights. So I don't mind that. So that's why this shot right here is a little bit underexposed. But now we go to that shot that we ended up talking about for this video, and here it is right here. And let me go ahead and show you guys a couple of the shots after this one. So you guys can see that, I changed the lighting to the side. Didn't like that. Moved it back a little bit more to the front. I asked her to go ahead and put her hand on the belt loop. And then her hair was just kind of just blowing to the wind. And I ended up, after I took this shot here, I ended up thinking, okay, I like that other shot. So let me just go ahead and just take it behind the scenes for that other shot. So here's the behind the scenes, and I'll go ahead and explain the editing on the other shot that I really liked. So you guys can see that I did adjust the exposure 0.8. I'm gonna show you guys how it looks like before. And like I mentioned earlier in the video, you guys can see that the background, as it's darker, you have the colors more saturated. So you have them less saturated with the brighter background. So usually I'll kind of aim for a background that's in the middle. If I don't want too much drama, then I'll, sacrifice the color. And what I usually always do in my photos, pretty much in every shot that I ever edit, is I always bring up the colors regardless. So the way that I do that is go to the calibration section in the develop module, go to the blue primary saturation slider and bring it up all the way to 80. Usually this brings up two colors way too much, the blues and the oranges. In this case, the blues I didn't mind because it's just in the sky. And the oranges I didn't mind because her skin tone was actually lacking. She was kind of pale. So when I brought up the colors, it kind of brought it to a normal level. So that's why you don't see any sort of lowering of the saturation of the orange right here. But you do see a lot of the hues and different colors being adjusted. I'm going to take off these different kind of adjustments in the hue so you guys can see how it looks like before. But it's kind of very minor. But what you're going to see is in the background here, these, I want to call them P yellows. You can see that I did adjust them to be more towards like a orange. So that's my main goal right there with me adjusting those hues. I didn't want the P looking yellow. So I didn't want that. So I just adjusted the hues specifically for those. As you guys know, whenever I edit a photo, I usually do selective adjustments using the adjustment brush tool. And I go to that section with the K shortcut. So here you guys can see that I did adjust the color of the eye and this area right here in the background. All this selection in red here, I adjusted the shadows. So I brought up the shadows. I'll show you guys the before and after. Before and the after. And I'll zoom in on the eyes so you guys can see how I adjusted the eyes. So this is the after. Here's the before of her eyes, and here's the after. You guys can see exactly what I adjusted in red, and you can see the settings on the right there. And that's pretty much everything I did to this shot in Lightroom. Now let's go ahead and bring it into Photoshop. Now we're here in Photoshop, and the very first thing that I usually do is I'll look at the shot. I'll just sit down and look at it and see what's really bugging me about this shot. What can I remove? So the first step is always removing distractions. So let me go ahead and show you guys what I removed. I'll go ahead and actually highlight everything. So everything that has these little lines here, you can see, I think they're called marching ants, but you can see that everything that's there is what I removed. So it's kind of a lot of things. So I removed the blemishes, stuff off her shirt, off the side of her, and on the ground. But aside from that, I do want to let you guys know that sometimes I won't catch everything. So one thing I didn't catch in this case was these cords here on top of her head. I think it's a case where I didn't really register them enough. And so it didn't bug me. In other words, I actually asked you guys on Instagram if they bugged you. And half of you guys, it was split in the middle. Half of you guys said it doesn't bug you at all. And the other half said you guys didn't see them until I mentioned them. And now that you see them, it is bugging you. So that's something that I failed on my part. As I'm seeing this photo right now, I can say that the cords do bug me. Also this, I don't know what it is, a meter. And this little area right here is bugging me. So if I could re-edit the shot, then I would go ahead and remove those. But let's move on. After I removed the distractions, I decided to look at the photo and see what I could improve. And one thing I saw that was lacking was the brightness of her eyes. I didn't want the eyes to just be part of the image. I want them to be a little bit of a focus point. So I brightened the eyes next. And then after I did that, I was like, let's see what else what I want to fix. What do I want to adjust here? And the next thing I decided to do was adjust the colors. And the way that I did that was using the color balance tool. And you can see that I brought the image to be a little bit cooler. And you can see all the different settings right there. You can see I did nothing to the shadows or the highlights. I just messed with the midtones. And then the next thing I did was selective color. At this point, I felt like the blues could be a little bit more dramatic and less saturated. So that's exactly what I did with that selective color adjustment layer. I brought down the blues and made them darker and also a little desaturated. So you can see that's exactly what I did to the blues before and after. Then I adjusted the colors of the sign, this barrier here, because again, I knew that I wanted to adjust those colors so it can match more to the shirt. So that's exactly what I did. Then I did 2 layers of dodge and burn, 2 rounds of dodge and burn. So you can see that's the before, that's the after, before, after. And only sometimes I'll do 2 rounds because usually the second round will be just focusing on the face. So this is the before on the face, and here's the after. And then I added a little bit of vibrance, but I added it selectively Again, I added vibrance throughout the shot, and then I just painted it off of her skin because then it became a weird color on her skin tones. Although this next layer is called Face Fix, it's actually not just the face, but her arms and a little bit maybe up here as well. And all I'm doing here is kind of unifying the colors throughout the skin. So what I mean by that is usually, you might experience this yourself, but sometimes when you work with somebody and you zoom in on their face, you'll see that there's certain areas of the skin that are just kind of desaturated. There's not enough color there. So what I usually do is I grab the eyedropper tool, I see wherever it's kind of like plain colors, and then I'll go to a little bit more saturated area. I'll sample that, and then I'll paint that over the area that's not so saturated, and then I'll do that throughout the body and the arms, and then I'll go ahead and change the blending mode of that layer to color. So this is just without that blending mode change. This is normal. So you guys can see that I added it here in the armpit, here, and where else on her face. Yeah, just different areas here. I painted on the color, then I changed the blending mode from normal to color, and that kind of just brought the color back to those areas. The very next thing I did was frequency separation, and I don't do this for every image. I try to avoid it and use dodge and burn instead. But for this image, I felt like her skin was a little patchy, so I wanted to correct it using frequency separation. So I'm not going to describe it in detail here. You guys can check out videos by Pix Imperfect or other channels, but I want to show you guys the results. So this is the before, and here's the after. The before and the after. And I use frequency separation mainly to kind of fix those patches on the skin. The very next thing is I adjusted this color of the hand right here. It's the same thing as I did just a second ago, where I added color to it, and then I changed the blending mode to color, and then I just lowered the opacity. And then after that, I just worked with the colors right here. I felt like they were sticking out like a sore thumb. So I desaturated them, or actually brought down the exposure of them, and then desaturated them just a little bit. Actually, just this one here with the desaturation. And then that's it. That's the whole edit. But these other layers right here is just to help with dodge and burn. That's pretty much everything. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it helped. And if you have any questions at all, let me know in the comment section below. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.